$20,000 down the drain, I whispered, staring at the brown water pooling around my feet. My brother's face contorted with feigned surprise as the contractor beside him stammered excuses. I silently turned, walked to my office, and unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Inside was a small audio recorder I'd hidden behind the living room bookshelf yesterday morning, after overhearing them whispering suspiciously the night before. I slid it into my pocket, returned to the kitchen, and pressed play in front of them. $5,000 for you if you cut corners everywhere else. My brother Kevin's voice crackled through the speaker. He'll never know the difference. The color drained from both their faces. I placed the recorder on the kitchen counter, my new granite counter with cheap laminate underneath, and picked up the sledgehammer I'd brought from the garage. Get out, I said, my voice eerily calm. Or I start with your truck. 5 years. That's how long it took me to save for this renovation. 5 years of brown bag lunches, no vacations, and weekend tutoring on top of my full-time teaching job. 5 years of dreaming about transforming the shabby house I'd inherited from my grandparents into something worthy of them and of me. I'd done all the research, pricing materials, learning about load-bearing walls, planning layouts, creating spreadsheets to track every potential expense. I even took night classes in basic construction to understand what I was getting into. But the one thing I hadn't accounted for, that my own brother would betray me. The house in Fresno wasn't much to look at when I moved in. Built in the 1950s, it had good bones but desperately needed updating. The kitchen had avocado green appliances from the 70s. The bathroom featured pink tile and a leaking shower. Single-pane windows let in drafts and the California heat. But it was mine mortgage-free. Grandpa's gift to the smart one who'd do something with it. Kevin had gotten cash from the estate. He blew through it in 18 months. You should hire Ramon and his crew. Kevin had said over beers in my backyard 3 months ago. They did the Mitchell's place down the street. Totally transformed it. And they'll give you a deal because you're my brother. I'd been hesitant. I don't know, Kev. I was thinking about Johnston Construction. They have great reviews online. Johnston's overpriced, he scoffed. Ramon's guys will do the same work for 2/3 the cost. Plus, I know him. Trust me on this. Trust me. The words echoed in my mind as I stared at the water now seeping through my brand new kitchen floor. The floor that was supposed to be waterproof luxury vinyl, but was clearly the cheapest laminate available, already warping from a simple water spill. I trusted Kevin because he was family. Because despite his flaws, the gambling, the get-rich-quick schemes, the constant money problems, he was my little brother. The one who'd climbed into my bed during thunderstorms as a kid. The one I'd helped through college when our parents couldn't afford it. Now I was staring at Ramon Diaz, watching him shift uncomfortably in my kitchen. His crew had cleared out for the day just an hour ago, declaring the renovation complete after 6 weeks of work. 6 weeks of dust and noise and displacement. 6 weeks of me sleeping on an air mattress in my office while they gutted and rebuilt nearly every room in my 1,400 square foot home. This is just a minor issue, Mr. Morris, Ramon said, not meeting my eyes. Probably just a loose connection under the sink. We'll fix it tomorrow, no charge. But I knew it wasn't just the sink. Over the past week, I'd noticed other problems. The crown molding didn't quite meet in the corners. The new electrical outlets felt loose in the walls. The shower tile grout was already cracking. Small issues that I tried to ignore, telling myself I was being too picky. Until I'd come home early today and overheard Ramon arguing with one of his workers in Spanish, not realizing I'd minored in the language during college. He's complaining about the cabinets already? They're gonna fall apart in a year anyway, just like everything else we put in this dump. That's when I started looking more closely, pulling out drawers, checking under sinks, researching brand names I didn't recognize, and discovering that nearly everything in my beautiful new house was the cheapest possible option, often factory seconds or returned items, despite the premium prices on the invoices I'd paid. Kevin had vouched for every expense. That's actually a great price for that brand, he'd say, or you're getting a deal on that upgrade. I believed him because why wouldn't I? He was my brother. I gripped the sledgehammer tighter as both men backed toward the front door. Tyler, man, let's talk about this, Kevin said, hands raised. There's been a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? My voice was barely audible. You took kickbacks to help him defraud me. You stole from me. From your own brother. It wasn't like that, he protested weakly. It's exactly like that, I replied, pulling out my phone. And if you don't both leave right now, I'm calling the police. They left. I stood in my empty kitchen, surrounded by the ruins of my dream home, and finally let the tears come. The next morning, I called in sick to school. For the first time in 7 years of teaching, I couldn't face a classroom of 8th graders. Not when I felt like a complete fool. I spent the day methodically documenting every flaw, every substitution, every corner cut in my renovation. I took photographs. I made lists. I compared invoices to what had actually been installed. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. The marble countertops were cheap laminate with a marble-look veneer already peeling at the edges. The hardwood floors were the thinnest possible vinyl. The new furnace was a reconditioned model at least 10 years old. The stainless steel appliances were the display models from a store that had closed down, full of dents on the sides conveniently hidden by cabinetry. All told, I estimated they had spent maybe $7,000 on materials for my $20,000 renovation. Another $3,000 probably went to minimal wages for the workers, which meant $10,000 had disappeared straight into Ramon's and Kevin's pockets. My phone had been ringing all morning. Kevin, Ramon, even my parents. I ignored them all until a number I didn't recognize appeared. "Hello, this is Tyler Morris," I answered warily. "Mr. Morris, this is Ray Jimenez. I'm a building inspector with the city. Your neighbor Jim Palmer called me this morning. Said you might have some work done that needs looking at." Jim was the retired contractor who lived next door. He'd offered advice when I first started planning the renovation, but I'd gone with Kevin's recommendation instead. Another mistake. "I'll be there in 30 minutes if that works for you," Ray said. When Ray arrived, I showed him everything. He moved through the house with a practiced eye, pointing out violations I hadn't even noticed: improper wiring, inadequate insulation, a gas line connection that made him immediately call the utility company to shut off my gas. "This is some of the worst work I've seen in years," he said, shaking his head. "And I'm pretty sure they didn't pull the proper permits for half of this. What can I do?" I asked, feeling the weight of hopelessness. "Document everything," Ray said firmly. "I'm writing up official citations, but you need to gather evidence for a civil case. This is fraud, plain and simple." As Ray was leaving, he turned back. "Your neighbor Jim mentioned your brother was involved." I nodded, the shame burning my cheeks. "Family's the hardest," Ray said sympathetically. "My cousin once sold my grandmother a car he knew had a cracked engine block. Some people just don't have boundaries when it comes to money." After Ray left, my doorbell rang again. I opened it to find my parents standing there. "Kevin told us what happened," my father said, walking past me into the house. "He says there's been a big misunderstanding, that you're overreacting." My mother touched my arm. "Honey, family shouldn't fight about money. Whatever happened, I'm sure it can be fixed." I led them through the house, showing them everything the inspector had found. My father, who'd worked construction in his youth before becoming a high school administrator, grew increasingly silent. My mother kept making excuses. "Maybe Kevin didn't know," she suggested. "Maybe this Ramon person tricked both of you." "Mom," I said, playing the recording again. Kevin knew exactly what he was doing. My father sat heavily on my sofa, the one piece of furniture that had survived the renovation. "How much will it cost to fix all this?" he asked quietly. "I don't know yet, but everything needs to be redone. Everything." "We have some savings," he started. "No," I interrupted. "This isn't your problem to fix." "But we can't just—" "Yes, you can," I said firmly. "Kevin is 34 years old. He orchestrated a scheme to defraud me of my life savings. This isn't sibling rivalry or a misunderstanding. This is a crime." My parents left an hour later, shaken and uncertain. They wanted time to talk to Kevin and figure things out as a family. I knew what that meant. They'd try to find a middle ground, a compromise, a way to avoid the uncomfortable reality that their younger son was a con artist who had victimized their older son. My father paused at the door. "I'll call Kevin tonight. I want to hear his explanation directly." His expression had hardened in a way I rarely saw. "If he lies to me again, things will change." My mother nodded reluctantly. "We need to face this, whatever it is." It was the first time I'd heard them acknowledge that Kevin might not be telling the truth. A small shift, but significant. As I closed the door behind them, my phone pinged with a text from Kevin. "We need to talk. Meet me at O'Malley's tonight at 8. I can explain everything." Asterisk, I stared at the message for a long time before replying. Nothing to explain. "Don't contact me again unless it's through your lawyer." Asterisk, then I blocked his number. The next week passed in a blur. My neighbor Jim introduced me to a good contractor friend of his who walked through the house and gave me a sobering estimate. $35,000 to fix everything properly. More than I'd initially planned to spend, and far more than I had left. The foundation is solid and the roof is okay, he said, trying to find some good news. But pretty much everything they did needs to be ripped out and redone. I contacted a lawyer recommended by Ray the inspector. He took my case on contingency after seeing the evidence I'd gathered. This is an easy win, he said confidently. The hard part will be collecting from these guys. Contractors like this tend to dissolve their companies and reappear under new names when they get caught. And my brother? I asked. The lawyer sighed. Family cases are always complicated. Juries don't like to see family members suing each other. But with that recording, we have solid evidence of conspiracy to defraud. We'll name him as a co-defendant. Meanwhile, I was living in a construction disaster. The gas was turned back on after proper inspection, but I was afraid to use the shower since we discovered the waterproofing had been improperly installed. I cooked on a hot plate since the fancy gas range turned out to have multiple safety issues. I slept on my old couch after finding out the floor in my bedroom might not support my bed. Kevin tried reaching me through various friends and even showed up at my school one afternoon. I refused to speak to him. My parents called daily, their tone shifting from "let's all work this out" to a gradual acknowledgement that something serious had happened. Your father went through all the invoices you sent us, my mother said during one call. He says it's worse than he thought. He's tried talking to Kevin, but Kevin keeps changing his story. I wasn't surprised. Kevin had always been the family charmer, talking his way out of trouble since childhood. He convinced our parents this was all a big misunderstanding, that he'd been duped too, that my phone rang again. Unknown number. Mr. Morris? This is Sophia from Westridge Credit Union. I'm calling about a loan application for a company called Morris & Diaz Renovations. We're conducting background checks on their references and past work. I sat up straight. What loan application? Someone named Ramon Diaz has applied for a business loan, listing your renovation as a reference project. He's starting a company with a partner named Kevin Morris. We're calling previous clients as part of our due diligence. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Not only had Kevin helped defraud me, but he was also planning to go into business with Ramon to scam more people and using my renovation as a showcase. Miss Sophia, I said carefully, I need to tell you something important about this loan application and their work. By the time I hung up, Kevin's loan application had been flagged for fraud investigation. I immediately called my lawyer and told him what I discovered. This changes things, he said. If they're using your renovation as a portfolio piece to solicit business and loans, we have additional causes of action. That evening, another knock at my door revealed Ethan, Kevin's best friend since high school. Ty, man, I need to talk to you, he said, looking uncomfortable on my doorstep. I hesitated, then let him in. Kevin doesn't know I'm here, Ethan said, declining my offer of a beer. But I found out what he did to you, and it's not right. No, it's not, I agreed. The thing is, Ethan continued, this isn't the first time. Kevin and Ramon have done this before. 3 other houses that I know of. I felt the floor drop out from under me. What? Different setup each time. Sometimes Kevin poses as a satisfied customer. Sometimes he brings in potential clients like he did with you. But the scam is always the same. Premium prices for garbage materials and work. Why are you telling me this? I asked, though I already suspected. Because he tried to recruit me to find the next Mark, Ethan admitted. And because he's been my friend forever, but what he did to you crosses a line I can't ignore. Ethan had names, dates, addresses. He agreed to provide a sworn statement to my lawyer. As he left, he paused. Your parents still don't believe it, do they? I shook my head. Show them this, he said, pulling out his phone. He played a video of Kevin and Ramon laughing at a bar, clinking glasses. To Tyler, Kevin toasted in the video. The easiest Mark we've ever had. I felt sick. When was this? Last week, Ethan said. The night he texted asking to meet you. 2 days later, I sat in my living room with my parents, my laptop open to the court filing my lawyer had prepared. The complaint named Ramon Diaz, RC Renovations LLC, Kevin Morris, and John Does 1 to 5 as defendants. It detailed every aspect of the fraud, supported by photographic evidence, expert testimony from the building inspector, invoices, the audio recording, Ethan's statement, and the video he'd provided. We're filing this tomorrow, I told my shell-shocked parents. The lawyer thinks we'll get a judgment, but collecting might be difficult. Ramon will probably file for bankruptcy and start a new company. And Kevin? My father asked, his voice hollow. He's named as a co-conspirator in a consumer fraud case. He could face criminal charges too, though that's up to the DA. My mother had stopped making excuses after seeing the video. Now she just looked broken. Why would he do this? To his own brother? Money, I said simply. Kevin has always wanted easy money. We failed him somehow, she whispered. No, my father said firmly, surprising me. Kevin made his choices. Tyler is the victim here. It was the first time in our lives that my father had taken my side against Kevin. It should have felt validating, but it just made me sad. My phone rang, my lawyer. Tyler, great news. The court granted our request for a temporary restraining order freezing Ramon's business accounts. And the DA is interested in the case. The investigator thinks your brother and Ramon may have defrauded several other homeowners. After I hung up, I explained the development to my parents. What happens now? My father asked. Best case? Ramon's insurance pays to fix my house. Kevin faces consequences, and I eventually recover some of my money. I shrugged. Worst case? I spend years in litigation, drain what savings I have left on legal fees, and still have to fix this mess myself. My father sat in silence for a long moment, then stood up suddenly. Come with me. He led us out to his car and drove to Kevin's apartment complex. Kevin's car was parked outside, alongside a new truck with RC Renovations painted on the side. Wait here, my father said. We watched as he walked up to the truck and stared at it for a long moment. For a second, I thought he might damage it somehow. Instead, he pulled out his phone and took several photos of the vehicle, the logo, and the license plate. Then he walked to several neighboring apartments and started talking to people outside, showing them something on his phone. When he returned to the car, my mother asked, "What did you do?" I showed Kevin's neighbors the news story about the scam and photos of Tyler's house, he said flatly. And I let them know their neighbor is under investigation for fraud. Word will spread fast. That's a down payment on the justice Tyler deserves, and it's legal. You've never stood up to Kevin like this before, I said quietly. I've enabled him for too long, my father replied, his voice breaking slightly. Not anymore. The story broke in the local news 3 days later. Local teacher uncovers renovation fraud ring. The reporter had gotten wind of the case through the building inspector's office. She interviewed me standing in my kitchen, surrounded by evidence of shoddy workmanship. How did you discover you were being defrauded? She asked. I trusted the wrong people, I answered honestly. But once I started looking closely, the evidence was everywhere. The segment aired on the evening news, complete with quotes from the building inspector and footage of my disintegrating renovation. The station also posted the story on their website and social media channels. Over the next week, the story gained traction locally. People shared photos of my ruined kitchen in Facebook neighborhood groups. The local paper ran a follow-up piece on how to avoid renovation scams. By the end of the week, my lawyer called with news. 3 more homeowners have come forward with nearly identical stories about Ramon and Kevin. They saw the news piece and recognized the pattern immediately. My brother showed up at my door that afternoon, rage contorting his features. You've ruined me, he snarled. That news story is everywhere. I'll never work in this town again. You ruined yourself, I replied calmly. And I'm just getting started. I handed him a folder containing printouts of all my evidence. The DA has copies of everything. So do the state contractors board, the Better Business Bureau, and every bank in town. Your business loan applications have all been flagged. Your contractor's license application has been denied. Kevin's face drained of color as he flipped through the pages. You can't do this, he whispered. We're family. That's exactly why I'm doing it, I said. Because family shouldn't steal from family. I closed the door in his face. 6 months later, I stood in my new kitchen, my actually new kitchen, with genuine quartz countertops, solid wood cabinets, and properly installed appliances. The renovation had finally been completed by Jim's contractor friend, who documented every step of the process for me. The legal battle was far from over. Ramon had indeed dissolved his company and filed for bankruptcy, but the DA had filed criminal charges against both him and Kevin. My civil suit was proceeding, with 7 other homeowners now joined as co-plaintiffs over the course of several months as more victims came forward. Insurance had covered some of the repair costs, and my parents had insisted on helping with the rest, despite my objections. It's our responsibility, my father had said. Not because we raised him wrong, but because we looked the other way too many times. Kevin had fled town after being served with the criminal complaint. Last I heard, he was in Nevada, probably running the same scam on new victims. But with warrants out for his arrest, it was only a matter of time. My phone buzzed with a text from Ray, the building inspector, who'd become a friend through this ordeal. Final inspection, all clear. Congratulations on your properly renovated home. Asterisk, I smiled and ran my hand over the smooth countertop. It had cost me more than money to get here. It had cost me my relationship with my brother, strained ties with my parents, and shaken my faith in my own judgment. But as I looked around at my beautiful, safe, properly built home, I knew I'd made the right choice in fighting back. Some betrayals can't be papered over or forgotten. Some require you to tear everything down to the foundation and start again. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and raised it in a silent toast. To new beginnings, to standing up for yourself, and to trusting, but verifying, even with family. Was I wrong to pursue legal action against my own brother? Or should I have found a way to forgive and forget for the sake of family peace? I still don't know. What would you have done in my place?